So welcome to the curl release, to the release presentation for the version, the curl version 8.15.0 released just today. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about what's in it. Right, this is me. I'm Daniel Stenberg. I've done it a few times. I am what I call the lead developer of the curl project. So this is now release number 269 since the dawn of time. Actually, this also includes counter for the releases we did before we called it curl. So anyway, this started in November 1996. And this time we have had participation from a bunch of people, right? So this time I've sort of spiced up the display here. So we got 57 contributors, 29 new, and out of them 37 authors and 16 new authors. So, and you can see there the numbers are really high on the total amount of people that actually helped out, and we keep getting new ones involved and helping out, and that's just great. That's awesome that it works like this. This time around, we've had a little bit of a shorter cycle than usual. We have actually 2 weeks shorter than usual. And the reason for that is that we were already planning on making it 1 week shorter due to just regular scheduling and my personal sort of vacations and stuff during this period. And then we cut off a week in the beginning of this cycle because we did a patch release from the previous one when we did curl 8.14.1. So we lost another week. So we lost 2 weeks from the regular cycle. So we're 6 weeks since the previous release, and we're on 9,980 days since the first curl release. So close to 10,000, right? Some other numbers. We are at 269 command line options. As you saw, this is release 269 with 269 command line options, a prime number, sort of the planets are aligned. We're still at 96 public libcurl functions and 308 curl easy setup options. Just some numbers. They keep growing and they're a huge amount, but they're sort of not grown this time around that much. We're at 0 security advisories to talk to you about today, so no new vulnerabilities in curl, so that's a yay. Nothing more to say about that. Go to that URL on up here to read up about old vulnerabilities and our mistakes we did in the past. This time around, we had this shorter release cycle, 42 days. So we didn't manage to actually merge a lot of changes, but we did do a pretty major change, which was more of a negative change because we removed support for 2 TLS backends. So this is the first curl release without support for secure transport and bare SSL as TLS solutions. So basically, when you build curl, you can't use these anymore. So if you were a user of these TLS backends in the past, you have to switch over to another one. So this was the only sort of change in this release. A lot of a big negative delta in terms of lines of code in the project. So good riddance. The primary reason we dropped these is that they don't support TLS 1.3, and there is no expectation of them ever doing that. So they're gone. We also logged about 233 bug fixes in those 42 days, which is roughly 5.5 bug fixes per day, which I think is a pretty high, insanely high rate, actually. And I wanted to just go through and mention a few of them. 233 are certainly far too many to get into details about a lot of them, but let's go through some that are, well, maybe not my favorite ones, but some of them I think that are worthy of mentioning. I fixed the so there's this alt service header, and there's a clear instruction in the alt service header for that, so sort of clear the previous information from the cache. And we've supported that for a long time. It turns out that we require the terminating semicolon on the line which is fine because that's what the spec says it should do. But of course, there are servers out there that are sending clear without the semicolon, and they expect it to work still. So now curl supports it without semicolon as well. We fixed a minor memory leak in the threaded name resolver. Basically, where in some circumstances, when you reuse the connection, no, you didn't reuse you reused the handle and blah, blah, blah. It would leak the host name, actually, the allocated part. So a tiny leak, but it could, of course, be annoying. Every leak is annoying, so we fixed it. It was the reason we actually had the leak was that we had done a previous mistake in the test suite that made us not detect this leak properly. So we fixed that problem also. So now we will detect this leak if we would do it again. We improved the handling of sort of, I don't know how to describe this. Pretty much, we drained the socket buffers better without doing additional selects and checks on the socket, which actually improved performance significantly in some cases. So now we're much better at reading data from localhost. Well, we can squeeze out a little bit more performance per CPU, pretty much. We've had a bug in the internal function that we use to read text files line by line, pretty much. We use that for reading the different data that we can store and read from text files, like alt service, HSTS, .netrc and stuff like that. And there was a problem if a line was exactly, I think, 128 bytes or something, it would not end. It would mess up the internals and it would do wrong. No, it doesn't anymore. We fixed the problem with SFTP when the path or the actual URL ended with exactly this /tilde, then it would do wrong and it would expect /tilde/. But now it accepts this as well, just a stupid mistake. And that's, of course, that lists the contents of the home directory, actually. Where we fixed tiny problems with trying to reuse an unclean connection, and that typically just results in us sort of being slower than we have to do in detecting that it is wrong, closing it and creating a new one and using that. But it's sort of a little bit of a waste of time, and now it's better. This little thing might be actually notable to some users now, but the URL API in curl now favors and produces uppercase hex encoding when it produces URL, this hex percent encoding things, percent blah blah in hexadecimal, which it does when it needs to encode something that isn't plain ASCII, pretty much. It used to do some of it in lowercase, some of it in uppercase, and now we're trying to switch that to be more consistently, or rather consistently, which then yes, always using uppercase, which then could be an issue if you're comparing what curl or assuming that what curl is outputting is exactly as before. Now it might not be, because now it might use uppercase hex instead of lowercase, as it did in some cases before. Just super annoying if you have that in a test case, as I did for TrueRel. So I sort of ran into this issue myself. You can now do what we call pre-quotes for a directory in a URL, which is just a way to provide custom FTP commands to a transfer. And when that transfer is asking for a directory listing, that actually bugged before. It was buggy, and now it works. Excellent. We had some memory leak sort of risk when handling server push, at least in that example. We now have fixing tiny quirks in the HTTP3 backend when we have multiple streams going. We had a regression. I don't remember exactly when we brought this back, but when you cancel a transfer doing HTTP2, we would not properly send that reset bit immediately. So it could be a little bit delayed, which was annoying to users. while we actually know when we have a boarded transfer, we can send that reset immediately. And now we do to the server to say, hey, we've stopped this transfer, it's dead, kill it in your end. We fixed the memory leak in libssh2, which occurred when I think you did a bad transfer, good transfer, bad transfer over SFTP or something, and then it could accidentally leak some part of some struct. Um, this message, this is from the commit message, is actually pretty strange, but at least it resulted in, when I fixed this, it fixed the memory leak. We had some read dir issues, so when you would do directory listings over SFTP and you would have a build with libssh, it didn't work always, and now that's fixed. We had so ping pong is the protocol handler internally for all the protocols that we call ping pong, which is FTP, SMTP, POP3, and IMAP, because they are, command response protocols, ping pong. And we had a situation where we could actually have we could get in bad sync with what we have sent and what we expected and so on, which could result in that we hadn't flushed everything that we would send. And anyway, that caused some problems, and we actually got a fuzzing error because of that. Now fixed, so now the ping pong is a tad bit better, especially in closing down when things go wrong. And we would have an accidental busy loops at sometimes after we got an E again when using as I think was libssh2, which then would get stuck in a busy loop using 100% CPU until some point later, which of course was super bad because that's just a total waste. So you see a lot of tiny things in the protocol department for all sorts of different protocols. And we also did a bunch of things related to TLS. So we, for example, we enabled read ahead with OpenSSL, and this is one of these fun things, right? So we've supported OpenSSL since 1998, I believe, or 99. And now we realize that yes, there's an option you can tell OpenSSL, so read more data ahead of time instead of just one by one. So by doing this, you could actually drastically increase performance when using OpenSSL. So suddenly doing OpenSSL based transfers could go X% faster than they did before, which of course is fun and good. And we fixed the problem with when we use OpenSSL engines. A regression, I think I broke that a few versions ago when I fixed some other things. And then related to the engine things, we also fixed the problem with the PKCS11 providers being the sort of the new way to do things that previously they did with engines, OpenSSL lingo. We implemented support for this particular option in curl, which is basically a way to get TLS backend data from a specific data, so you can get a pointer to the sort of a handle of the TLS library context, sort of, if you want to do funky stuff as an application. We fixed a few things in the Russell's backend, so we improved the ECH thing and memory allocation issues. We've patched up the wolfSSL backend so that it would be on par or work exactly in like the OpenSSL one in turn when using the ML-Chem hybrids, which are post-quantum crypto cipher things. So now they work more similarly to each other, so that's good. And just sort of as a reminder, sort of curl works excellently fine with all those post-quantum crypto, so you can, if you just enable them in the TLS libraries, you should be able to use them fine with curl. And some other things we did. So we basically have over time transition to change more of the symbols that we provide in the curl header to be defined as longs instead of just plain values. So, and by defined as long, I mean that they have this uppercase L as a suffix, which, and the reason is just that it helps users to do less mistakes, because if you use that defined then purely in a command, no, sorry, in source code, it'll use them as longs, and they're supposed to be longs when used in curl easy setup function calls, right? So it's a way for us to try to help users do less mistakes. Uh, it's a little bit of a gamble because it could cause some other, but we'll see. Hopefully that it'll be a net positive. We fixed how to do non-blocking standard N reads, standard input reads on Windows, which is the dash uppercase T followed by a dot. Basically, you're asking curl to read from, so you can do a put, HTTP put from standard input in a non-blocking way. So you can use it as a pipe, pretty much, read from standard in and send that to the remote as you go along. That didn't work on Windows before this fix. Now it works. We also fixed when doing that same thing on a non-Windows machine. It was actually pretty slow. Also, another regression from a few versions ago. Now it's way faster again. We fixed another regression that this is fun. So this option --FTP passive PASV, right? It's an FTP command, basically asking curl to switch to passive mode for FTP, which is the default. So typically you wouldn't use this. But if you would use the opposite version, it would be called --no FTP passive, which would then sort of switch off the passive mode. And that didn't work because of a mess up by me through when I did some refactoring a while ago. Another tiny regression in the command line parser section was that when we use --retry, when there was some return code mess up, also because of my refactoring of the command line parser code. So we found it, we fixed it, and it's no worries anymore. Of course, both those latter two regressions, they actually happened, of course, because it turned out that we didn't have test cases that covered exactly those setups. Annoyingly, of course. I introduced some fun per test case memory limits now for the test suite to make sure that every test case we do has a controlled or a set amount of number of allocations and a number of bytes, pretty much, that they're allowed to spend before they trigger an error. And this is just to make sure that, as a means for us to just keep track of the amount of memory and how many memory allocations we use, just so that we don't accidentally do something stupid and it'll just, go out of something crazy. Now we will know if that happens, and then we will make sure that it doesn't happen, or raise the limits if we need to. So Stefan also then added flame graphs and documentation for that, for the scorecard thing in the PyTest, so you can run more performance-related tests and get a lot of more data out of those performance tests to analyze where is CPU time spent when we're running all these, as a means for us to help, polish things and make sure that we perform as good as possible. It also helps then everyone who wants to run performance tests and benchmarks and tweak it and make sure that we're not wasting time anywhere. One of the larger things, actually, if you're a developer here using curl and you're building curl and you're running curl tests, one of the things that you will notice now that this is the first curl version where we always use the bundled approach for doing test cases. And the bundled approach is that, so we also called sometimes unified builds. So you can actually build the entire curl like that, which means that we have a script that puts all the files into a single one, and you just compile that single file. Bam, that's the unified builds with curl, both the tool and the library. It can do that if you enable that in CMake or configure. And we also had that previously for the test cases, called them bundled tests, which did the same thing with the magic script. But now we basically remove the magic script and always do this. So that, well, maybe we didn't remove the script, but it's not magic anymore. Now it's assumed to be there. So pretty much all test cases are now built as independent files that are all just linked together in one single binary. It's not exactly true. It's not one single. It's a few separate binaries. But so this pretty much makes it, instead of us building, I don't know, 200 separate tiny test binaries, we now have 4, which is a huge boost in build time. And well, it actually simplifies a lot of things. It's still very easy to debug them and run them one by one. And as a user, or if you run single individual test cases with their test suite and everything works exactly as before. So it's more of a thing for us who actually write test cases, that they now need to be a little bit different. Still an easy transition, and it's perfectly clear and logical how to do it. So easy peasy, just a regular improvement actually. We went through, one of these things that we've tried to do in curl over the last, I don't know, year, pretty much since the XZ attack, is to make sure that we don't have anything that is a binary blob in curl, and we also reduce the amount of base 64 blobs in curl, so that as much as possible of everything we have in curl is clear what it is, so we don't hide anything, encode it in any way. And one of the steps is then to make sure that we don't store data base 64 encoded. We encode it on demand when we run test cases. So, example, test cases that need a big blob base 64 encoded, we on demand base 64 that instead when the test case is to be run. And we do that with this %b64 instruction in the test per test case. So this time around, we actually went through and made sure that a lot of test cases no longer actually provide anything pre-base 64 encoded. We're not hiding anything in that encoding. For transparency, for everyone to better understand what it is we have in there. This time around also, we just clarified a thing that we've actually for a long time have been wanting, and we have sort of had the intention. Now we made it explicit that all vulnerability reports that we receive in the curl project should be disclosed. So we receive security vulnerability reports to our setup on HackerOne, right? When people suspect a security problem, or their word something has a security impact, or there is a vulnerability. And now we have as a policy so that we always disclose all of them. Independent if they're valid or not, we will disclose them. As soon as we have closed them and we're done with them, we disclose them. So you can see this now by going to the hackerone.com/curl, and there's a activity tab there, so you can see a stream of reports that we are disclosing, and that those are all the ones we get. And you'll see, of course, that most of them are not sort of confirmed security problems. Most of them are, a lot of them are just plain stupid. Some of them are just mistakes. Some of them are, we can decide and we can talk about it. So it's in the name of transparency and openness. Go there and check them out. And so that was 5 slides with curl bugs, I think like 25, but there's a huge amount of them on this full changelog page. Go there and you can see the 233 bug fixes. Most of them are linked to where they come from, so you can read up about more details if you want to, dig into it more than just reading the brief little line in the changelog. So this is the summer of 2025. We have things to do, and we have some pending sunsets, right? So we're going to remove stuff, even remove these TLS libraries in this release, but we're looking forward to remove support for MSH3, which is a H3 backend, HTTP3. And we are going to remove that in July, which then happens to be this month, right? So as soon as the feature window opens again, we will remove support for this. It's an HTTP3 backend that hasn't really been working in curl for a long time, so I don't think many people will actually miss it. We have a lot of other HTTP3 backends to select from and use instead that are working a lot better. So do that if you want to do HTTP3. In September, we're going to rip out support for the what we called the WinBuild build system. The WinBuild build system is just a particular setup in curl. We called it WinBuild, which make file-based system to build on Windows using Visual Studio. We have a transition, so in documented way for you what you should do instead. Do that instead, and we will remove support for this. This is in the name of simplifying for us by reducing the number of build systems. It makes our lives so much simpler and easier, right? So we don't have to fix everything on 22 places when we fix things. We can sort of reduce that, and it'll then also reduce the risk that we actually forget one of those or do regressions because they are not in sync and blah blah blah. So I think this is good. And by November, we will remove support for Windows CE and Visual Studio 2008. Again, I don't think this is going to be, I mean, this is not going to hurt a lot of users because not a lot of users are using Windows CE, which is end of life since a long time ago from Microsoft themselves. And with Visual Studio 2008, which we basically only have supported up until this point because Windows CE. So both users are actually using this. They will be sad, but this again makes our lives so much easier. Windows CE, and Windows is a special operating system in many ways, and Windows CE even more so. So this will make, we will sort of enjoy when this happens because it's going to make things easier and better, and we will be happier as developers when we can do this. So going forward, we expect the next release. We hope, fingers crossed, that it'll be 8.16.0, right? If we did any bad mistakes in this release, which we actually happen to do quite a lot when it comes to a .0 release, so maybe this time we won't have done one of those regressions, even though this is a .0 release. And if we haven't done one of those mistakes, we can do the 16 next time. If we had done one of those mistakes, it'll be a patch release instead. But if we don't do a patch release, or what we want to do for the next feature packed release, the next .0 release, we have a lot of things that we want to get done for that. We want to add support for native CA stores on Apple operating systems. There is a patch that is outdated, so we want to get that going again. We have a PR that seems to be falling behind to add a fallback for alt service. When we decide to use an alternate service, when that fails, it should fall back to use the original one instead. We want to add support for the netrc environment variable to find the netrc file. Apparently, this is sort of it's not a standard. It's more of a lot of tools are using this environment variable to find a netrc file. So we're going to do that as well going forward, just to sort of follow what others have done already. So maybe make life easier for some. I want to merge this feature called location mode in here. It's still not decided exactly what to call this option because it's a new option, and it's about how to do redirects when you have a custom method or a different method, the verb in HTTP. So we're still bike shedding the name and how it should work. So, but I want to get to it. I've had it there sort of brewing for a while, and maybe we should fix it now. We'll see. Names are hard. There's more work to do in HTTPS RR. And ideally we want to do this, go out of experimental mode eventually. So I want more code, more tests, more people trying it out to make sure that it actually. We have work going to be able to tell curl that the network has changed. And why do you want to do that? Well, for example, your connections may no longer actually work when you change network, but maybe curl hasn't noticed. It basically means that all existing connections are they seemingly alive because the sockets are there, the connections seem to be there, but they're actually dead. So they shouldn't be attempted to be reused because the network has changed. So this is a new proposed way to tell curl that, hey, the network has changed, deal with it. Yeah, it's an old known issue in curl. Curls typically survives this anyway, even without this, but this is we're introducing a new way to do this more elegantly, more reliably, and with more control from the application side. I want to add support for this equals sign when parsing long options with the curl tool. As you know, this long opt equals value with no space at all in there. Curl doesn't support this right now. It has never done that, but I want to add this support because this is how a lot of other command lines tools work with long options. So basically, by adding this support and not talking a lot about it because we don't want to, and then after a few years with this supported, then maybe you will find that curl will that it works more like other tools in when it parses long command line option names. We have patch PR for adding support for this callback when doing WebSockets. Pretty much improving WebSocket support a little bit further when doing an application with libcurl doing it. This, in particular, if you do it, well, I'll leave it at that. Go read about it. If you're doing WebSockets with libcurl, you probably want to read up on this and follow along and bring your feedback and comments, and let's try it out. Let's get WebSocket support even better. We have a PR for adding this out null command line option, which is pretty much a shortcut, a alias for saving the output to dev null, that is, throw it away. And why do you want an alias for that? You can just add -o/dev/null, right? But it turns out that first, this is portable, right? So you could do this on any operating system, and /dev/null doesn't work, for example, on Windows, and it could be different on different systems. This works the same way, so you could it would be easier for you to do a portable command line that works. You can just copy and paste between a Unix machine and a Windows machine. But it also improves performance quite a lot, actually. So if you're doing like a performance test on your machine, hey, I want to just see how fast does it download 100 gigs from localhost. This boosts your performance with a 2-digit number of percent, it turns out. So there are some benefits of doing this. We want to bump the default minimum TLS version to be 1.2. It still allows you to select a lower minimum on the command line and with libcurl. So if you want to, and if your TLS library actually supports it, because this is what curl wants to do. Curl then sets the default minimum to be 1.2. The TLS libraries tend to have their own decisions too, so maybe they will also, not allow anything below 1.2, maybe, but sort of there are a lot of different components here, right? So still, we think it's about time that we bump the default minimum so that you won't accidentally get a lower, but you can get it if you ask for it. There's a proposal to add this new API called curl multi get info in spirit of the curl easy get info to extract information, runtime information from multi-handles. Maybe how many transfers are active, how many are in queue, or other things that are internal information in the multi-handle that isn't that easy for an application to figure out by itself. But curl knows it, and it could provide it. We could expose it through this API. There's a discussion, of course, maybe not what to call it, but exactly how the API should work. Should we follow the traditional curl style with weak type support, or should we do it differently this time? If you have opinions, you head to that PR. It's a discussion right now, I think. Anyway, head to it and bring your opinions and thoughts, and we might get to it. As you can see, sorry, I want to get back. This is a bunch of things, right? I believe there are 13 blue boxes here. I'm not sure I don't think we're going to be able to address all of them in this cycle. So I think a few of these will be blue boxes in the next video I do as well. But still, it all depends on exactly how much help we get and how much focus we have on all these things. So get involved and help us push whatever you think we should push for. The next release then is planned for September 10, 8.16.0, and we will keep this URL updated over time so you can see what we managed to actually merge through this release cycle. This is automatically updated, or we update this every few days. And then just a reminder that we are doing this 8-week release cycle, right? So we start this, today is a release Wednesday, and then we have a 10-day cool down period. We will have it this time around as well. So it's July 16 now. So 10 days later, that's July 26. And then we have a feature Saturday. Then we open the feature window, and we have the feature window open for 3 weeks, exactly 21 days until it's Saturday again. And then we enter feature freeze, and we have a feature freeze until we do the next release Wednesday. So this is the on and on and on the release cycle that we do. Sometimes we tweak it a little bit so it's not full 8 weeks. So then we sort of tweak it around a little bit, but this is the fundamental basic setup that we're doing. And we're also have added this to spice up things. When we get into feature freeze, that freeze Saturday, we release a release candidate 1, and then we do a release candidate 2, and then we do a release candidate 3. And they are also set up on this fixed calendar thing. So as you can see, they happen with the sort of 9 days, 7 days interval to allow us, and we do the release candidates like this to allow everyone to try out what is coming early and report regressions to us so that we can fix them and have less regressions in the eventual final release. It has so far been actually quite good. So I really appreciate it. So if you're an application or using libcurl stuff, we really appreciate when you're getting one of these release candidates to just verify, does everything still work exactly as it did before? Because it should, right? And if it doesn't, tell us, and then we could make sure that we don't actually ship as many regressions going forward. And if you do anything commercial with curl, and I hear a lot of people do that, you might want to talk to us about getting a support contract or other help, whatever you want from curl commercially. We will do that for you. If you find any bugs, submit them. We can't fix any bugs that we don't know about, so tell us about them. We are pretty good at fixing those that we actually are told about. If you find security problems or suspect one, go to hacker.com/curl and submit them. Do not use an AI to search for bugs, and preferably don't use an AI at all when you're reporting anything to curl, because they will lie to you, and you will believe in them, and you will just make a fool of yourself. So don't do that. Tell us in your words and about your findings. Thank you. And this is the list of top curl sponsors of July 2025, the same set as I've had shown for a long time. The heroes, our best friends, they make sure that we can keep on shipping and producing curl the way we do. So thanks, good friends. If you want to be a sponsor, head over to the sponsor page on curl, on the curl site, curl.se/sponsors.html, and join the team. That's what I wanted to say to you this time. Let's hope I won't see you again until September. Bye.